Let's unpack this. Why would poor girls in ancient China, gather in a public space every single night? It seems kind of strange, right? Sort of goes against that whole work at sunrise, rest at sunset idea we might have.
It really does. And what's fascinating here is that this seemingly simple question, it opens up a whole window into shared resources, economic behavior, even social norms back then.
Right.
We're drawing on some pretty solid historical records. Sima Qian's Records of the Grand Historian,
Mm.
Lu Jiang's biographies of exemplary women, the Book of Han.
And perspectives from thinkers, too, like Han Shan, Yang Xiang.
Exactly. Sima Guang, Lu Jiao, they all offer different angles.
So our mission for this deep dive is really to unravel this puzzle. We want to show you how people, even centuries ago, were dealing with stuff we still think about now.
Things like resource sharing, yeah.
Yeah.
And that tricky problem of free riding.
And even work-life balance, it's all in there. And honestly, the way the story itself changes over time is really revealing.
Definitely. So let's start with that basic picture. Women gathering at night. What did the earliest sources, like the one Sima Qian worked with, actually say?
Well, Sima Qian adds this detail, Huiji, which he takes to mean weaving together. But crucially, he interprets it as weaving together under shared light.
Ah, so the key isn't what they were doing together, but why they were together.
Precisely. During the day, fine, use sunlight at home. But night, you need light, and candles, or rather torches back then, were expensive.
So gathering publicly and pooling that light resource,
Yeah.
it just made economic sense.
Yeah, like a very, very early version of the sharing economy almost.
It's a great parallel. And it's important, as you said, that weaving together likely meant individual work, just done collectively to save on that light cost.
Which brings up that interesting point Sima Qian makes about value.
Right, the idea of the vortex. He suggests that whatever is most scarce or valuable dictates the cooperation. Initially, maybe human labor wasn't the constraint.
It was the light, the expensive light, so people had to cooperate around the light.
Exactly. And we need to picture what candle meant then. Warring states, period. We're talking torches, essentially, not wax.
Wax candles were later.
Yeah. Han Dynasty, they start showing up, but definitely luxury items. These torches, while simpler, were still a real cost for a poor family.
That anecdote about Xichong really drives it home, doesn't it? The super rich guy in the Jin dynasty.
Using candles, actual valuable candles, just to cook his food is meant to be this shocking display of unbelievable wealth.
Wow. Okay, so light is precious, maybe even more precious than labor initially. They gather to share it, but that leads to another problem.
Uh-huh. The free rider problem?
Yeah.
What if someone shows up and benefits from the shared torchlight, but doesn't, bring their own torch or chip in?
And this is where the story gets really specific, introducing this poor girl, later named Shuwu.
Yes. She couldn't afford to contribute light. And the expectation, naturally, would be that everyone pulls their weight somehow.
But she finds another way. The text calls it her self-defense.
It's brilliant, really. She proactively offers extra effort. Maybe she helps set up, cleans up, offers other small services, things that benefited everyone, even the rich girls who are providing the light.
So she makes herself valuable in a different currency, essentially. Not light, but labor or service.
Precisely. It's a fascinating early glimpse of navigating that shared resource dilemma when you don't have the primary means of contribution.
It makes you think about modern examples, like the source mentions street lamps. You can't really charge per person walking under one.
Right, the cost doesn't increase much with one extra user. But Shuwu's case was slightly different. There was a tiny cost, a bit more light used, perhaps.
So the rich girl could have, theoretically, made an economic argument for excluding her, right? Find someone else who can pay.
She could have, but Shuwu's proactive solution kind of preempted that by adding value in another way. It's interesting that the source suggests ancient intellectuals found this sort of non-monetary solution a bit hard to grasp initially.
Which maybe explains some of the later interpretations, like Han Shan, the Tang Dynasty poet.
Yes, Han Shan uses the imagery. His poem is more of a moral condemnation, isn't it? Blaming the rich for hoarding their lantern light while the poor shiver in the dark.
He sees the potential for, what's the term, Pareto improvement, where everyone could be better off if the rich just shared a little.
Exactly. It's a powerful ethical point about resource distribution.
But as the source notes, Han Shen kind of misses the nuance of the original story, doesn't he? He doesn't seem to register Shuwu's own agency, her proactive efforts.
No, he focuses more on the rich person's failure to be charitable. And apparently, other writer later on also sort of missed the point, complaining about the rich girl's supposed stinginess, without considering their own potential contribution or lack thereof.
So the story keeps evolving. Then Lu Shang picks it up for his biographies of exemplary women.
And he adds more detail. Now, the characters have names. Xu Wu is the poor girl, Li Wu is the richer one, and a specific place, the East Sea of Qi.
He gives Shu Wu a more elaborate speech too, right?
Yes, much more literary. She argues, in one room, adding one person doesn't dim the candle, taking one away doesn't make it brighter. It's an appeal for mercy, framing herself as a poor concubine.
And that's where the phrase remaining light of the east wall comes from.
That's the one. It becomes this cultural shorthand. Phrases like borrowing light are still around, though maybe used differently now.
But hang on, the source raised a really good point. The earliest version, in the Strategies of the Warring States, it doesn't mention weaving at all, just gathering.
Right. So why did Sima Qian and Lu Xiang add weaving?
Good question. What's the thinking there?
Well, the most plausible reason is context. By the time they were writing, Han Dynasty, women weaving at night seems to have become, well, a thing.
Oh, it was common practice.
Apparently so. The Book of Han explicitly records women in neighborhoods weaving together at night, particularly in winter.
Ah, okay. So they were likely projecting their contemporary reality onto the older story. And were there other reasons for communal night weaving by then, besides just saving light?
Yeah, the Book of Han suggests practical benefits. Skilled weavers working alongside less skilled ones could help everyone improve, maintain quality standards.
Makes sense for producing goods.
Plus, you at the social side, neighbors chatting, building community bonds. The source even mentions it could be a space for socializing between young men and women, maybe even courtship.
So it became a multifunctional activity by the Han period, which leads us to why night weaving was so common, especially in winter. It sounds pretty demanding.
Simple reason, really.
Yeah.
Shorter days, longer nights. If you needed to get a certain amount of work done, especially textile work, which was crucial, you had to work into the night.
So this whole idea of intense work schedules, grinding away, it's not exactly new.
Not at all. The 996 debate has ancient roots, you could say.
And just like today, people back then had strong opinions about it,
阳运
for instance.
Yeah,
阳运
who Sima Guan really admired, apparently condemned working at night. He saw it as a symptom of bad governance, of rulers mismanaging resources and pushing people too hard.
Interesting. Blaming the system, not just the individual's choice.
And Sima Guan himself kind of echoed that. He argued the root problem wasn't necessarily this policy or that, but incompetent officials. If officials managed things properly, people wouldn't need to work such grueling hours.
And he connected this to his criticisms of Wang Anxi's reforms, right? Seeing them as part of that mismanagement.
That's the context, yes. A belief that good governance should allow for a more reasonable work rhythm.
But not everyone saw it negatively. You mentioned Lu Yu.
Right, Lu Yu, the poet. He actually writes with a sense of pride about the tradition of hard work, pounding rice early in the morning, weaving late at night. He saw as diligence, a virtue he wanted to pass down.
Wow, so completely different perspectives. One seeing it as hardship imposed by bad rulers, the other as the commendable work ethic.
It really shows the diversity of views on labor, leisure, and necessity across different times and, likely, different social strata.
Okay, so let's try and sum this up. We started with poor girls gathering at night.
And we found this amazing story revealing ancient ways of managing resources, like sharing candlelight.
Plus, a really early example of tackling the free rider problem with Yu's clever self-defense.
And we saw how social norms around work and community changed, with night weaving becoming common in the Han Dynasty for various reasons.
And finally, these contrasting views on whether working long, hard hours was a sign of virtue or a symptom of failure.
Yeah, the aha moments are definitely the sheer practicality of the shared light idea, Xu Wu's proactive approach.
Realizing these economic dilemmas aren't new.
And seeing that debate about work intensity playing out centuries ago.
So for you listening, what this deep dive really offers is a richer way to understand fundamental human behaviors, resourcefulness, community, that constant balancing act between what I need and what the group needs.
It shows how people tackled similar challenges across huge spans of time, just with different tools and contexts.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to mull over. Thinking about these ancient ways of sharing, like the candlelight and these old debates about work ethic, how does that resonate today?
Yeah, how do those perspectives challenge or maybe affirm our own modern approaches? With all our technology, our ideas about community, about work-life balance.
What remaining light are we sharing now or maybe carefully guarding? And what are the hidden costs or maybe the unexpected benefits of those choices we're making?
If you found this discussion useful, maybe learned something new, definitely hit that subscribe button. We do these deep dives regularly, exploring valuable ideas.
We appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.